Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of season 3 of the Business Matters podcast. My name is Chelsea Seckora. I am the director of Brand Communications here at the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce. And I have with me today Jordan Stoll, the co-owner of Slab Factory. And today we're going to be talking about Slab Factory and building community through collecting. We want to thank our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union, and we are coming to you from the Win Technology Studio. So, Jordan, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So from Pokemon cards to sports cards, we'll explore how this shop has turned a shared hobby into a sought-out local hangout and small business success story. So I'm no stranger to this shop
Absolutely.
as somebody that dabbles in all things TCG. But
Yes.
Jordan, why don't you start off with just a little introduction and what Slab Factory is?
Yes, absolutely. So again, appreciate you having me on. Slab Factory is a local card shop, local game store. We kind of wear a couple different hats as far as that goes, but we carry a couple different things as far as Pokemon to sports, a little bit of actually games now as far as video games go. But we try to be kind of a local hub more than anything, more than like a game store, as far as building a community around these TCGs, and then not only that, but a little bit more of kind of the playing side too. So just more of a game store that is kind of more of evolved into more of a community aspect of said TCGs.
Yeah, so how did this even get started? I remember my husband stumbling upon your shop in Banbury Place. So
Absolutely,
how did this
yeah.
come to be?
So we did start in Banbury. That was kind of our first foray into the retail side. So Tyler Henderson and I started Slab Factory. We were both working together actually at the time, and we were both in sales and had kind of a shared passion for cards. And Tyler actually is the one that got me back into cards. As most people, I collected cards as a kid, and you kind of get out of it for a little bit, you get into other interests, and then eventually I kind of was reintroduced back into cards again, not knowing that it was even a thing anymore, actually. So,
Right.
I was away from it for so long. I had played sports. I'd gone to, college for a little bit, and I was focusing on so many different things that I had just kind of lost track of it. And then Tyler kind of reintroduced me to sports cards. Obviously, I'm a very big, kind of Wisconsin sports fan. So Bucks, Packers, Brewers and that kind of thing. And he had reintroduced me and showed me, kind of the world that, was cards now, because it's evolved so much since I was a kid,
Yes.
So when I was a kid, it was I would go to, the local Kmart in Chippewa, and I would beg my parents and my grandma to buy me a pack of, hockey cards. I never even played hockey, but I
Right.
just wanted the cards,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I would just beg them to buy me some cards. And I had binders, and I still have my childhood binders. Of course, I didn't buy Pokemon as a kid, even though that's what would have done really well for me. So
in today's day and age,
exactly. I have
right?
the old hockey cards, binders full of stuff, but I still have them, and it was such a cool. Kind of on a little tangent, such cool to like look back at that and like even talk with like my grandma and my mom and dad about like where we kind of are now with Slab Factory, and like them buying me the packs and kind of reminiscing on that, and they remember me collecting as a kid too, and it's really cool to kind of look back at that. And that's kind of almost the basis of what we're about, right? Is like bringing people back to those good memories, and like that's what we kind of what we've really gotten feedback from a lot of people is like, there's a lot of stuff going on nowadays, and like for a lot of people it's more of a reprieve into a better time almost, and like for like-minded people that they really like too, and like it's been really cool to be able to kind of cultivate that community as well. So to get back on where we started, me and Tyler kind of came up with this idea when he reintroduced me to it. There's obviously graded cards is a large aspect of the hobby. So to grade a card, to not get into too much detail again, is a pretty expensive endeavor, obviously. So it's probably about $20 plus to grade a single card. Sometimes a lot of people like the graded card look, right? It adds value to the card. It normally is worth more, especially if it grades well. But people really value graded cards over just having the card in a raw state, right? So what our idea was we initially started out with basically a card case that would kind of give it a graded card look, but it would have a custom label on top. So essentially you could have a graded card look, but almost kind of give it your own custom flair. for about a fifth of the price, right? So like that was kind of our idea that we came up with is we thought, we have a lot of cards ourselves that we don't really care about paying to like grade it because like for us we're never going to sell it. So like the grade doesn't matter to us, but
Mm-hmm.
that's we still want to show it off, right? Like it's still a really prized part of like our collection, but like it's not necessarily something that, we want the extra value out of and we don't want to pay 25 bucks to grade per card, right? So
Right.
yeah, that kind of gets, that adds up pretty fast and takes away from the other cards you can buy, right? So that's how Slab Factory started, and we actually ran a Kickstarter for that initial batch of
I
cards.
did not know
Yeah, so we
that.
ran a Kickstarter. We successfully funded the Kickstarter. I think it was like $13,900. We had a ton of support from family, friends, and obviously the community as well. Couldn't thank people enough, for that. And we ran that Kickstarter, funded our first kind of batch of manufacturing. And then we kind of went down this rabbit hole of manufacturing them, going back and forth with manufacturer and kind of getting them into what we wanted. Ended up getting our first batch of 5,000. Obviously supplied everyone that kickstarted us with their, kind of cards and stuff like that too. And it was a really cool time. It was kind of a lot of learning, obviously lessons of kickstarting because I've never done a Kickstarter before or anything like that,
So yeah.
crowdfunding, or anything. So it was really cool to kind of go through that process. But then not only that is, then after that you actually got to do it,
Yeah.
so it's a lot more marketing on the first Kickstarter side, and then it's a lot more, you actually got to learn manufacturing and start to learn the ins and outs of that afterwards. So essentially
Yeah.
we kickstarted that, we did that, and then for about 3 years roughly, we would go to local shows, bigger shows, Minnesota, throughout Wisconsin and stuff, and then we would essentially, kind of market our Slab Factory cases. So we would take the Slab Factory cases, go to the shows. Our main focus then was just to sell the cases, and at that point we hadn't really expanded our vision at all. But as we sold the cases, at card shows, you kind of, you buy and sell cards, singles, slabs, and like sealed product at like these tables.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the one that was normally doing all the shows, and I kind of just started getting a little bit of an inventory. We started getting a couple cards. I would go to shows, we do decently well, and I would kind of create more of people would follow. We kind of push our social medias. People kind of started to follow us from the shows, and then eventually our inventory just kind of kept growing. And after about, like I said, it took about 2 years or roughly of just kind of doing shows maybe every month, every other month. And then once we kind of got through that, the inventory just got to a point where me and Tyler started talking. And we're like, hey man, like we should really look at like maybe opening a retail spot,
Yeah.
like and at the time it was a little bit more of like we were doing so well at shows and like traveling so well at shows that it was going to be more of kind of like a buying center, because like
Yeah.
the biggest thing for like a vendor is you just have to get inventory, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could be kind of tough. And like for our community, there wasn't as many places to just go and like sell cards, right? Because that has to be in the card like space. You have to have some sort of liquidity, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people collect what they want, but not everything is what they want, right? So like a lot of
Oh,
times
sure.
people they need to get rid of something they don't want to get what they want, right? And so
Yeah.
like there just wasn't a lot of great places for that at the time. So our thought was is we could kind of do a little bit of both with that. So our initial thought was we were only going to be open like every other weekend in Banbury. We got a really small space. It was kind of be an every other weekend thing, and
Uh,
we were gonna just kind of have that space open for people to come hang out, sell cards they don't want, trades for stuff they do want, kind of a thing, and just kind of be a small operation that me and Tyler could kind of run, after our jobs, kind of thing,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
obviously we opened, and basically as soon as we opened and on opening day, obviously, we had you guys down, and we really appreciated that, and I mean we've been friends ever since,
Oh
which has
yeah.
been really cool. So, but we had such a good kind of grand opening and such a good response from there. I mean, after the first day, me and Tyler kind of sat down and we were like, hey man, like this we can't do every other weekend. Like it's gonna
No.
have to
There's a
be,
need.
yeah. Like it went from every other like Friday and Saturday to like, hey, we got to be like 3-4 days a week, open here. And so like we just kind of went straight into it, and from that day on, really, it was just kind of like a, hey, like let's go all in, and like we got such good like community feedback from it. It was kind of like a, let's figure out how to make this work.
Yeah, no, look at you guys. So, just to clarify for our audience,
Yeah.
because we know what graded and
Yes, yes,
cards
yes.
mean. So, just to kind of go back a little bit, let's talk about what graded means and why there's such a value to get cards graded. And then maybe a lot of folks might think of cards as like tops, the
Yes.
sports cards, which
Yes.
obviously play a vital role in the card community.
Absolutely.
But now we have Pokemon,
Mm-hmm.
which is based off of a Japanese anime
Yes.
and features little critters that have become wildly popular
Absolutely.
with all kinds of ages and demographics.
Yes.
And so on top of that, Disney's also hopped
Yeah,
on the
Lorcana.
the
Yep.
TCG game, TCG meaning trading card game.
Yes.
But you have a lot of really big franchises coming in now because of how successful the TCG community is becoming.
Yes.
So if you want to kind of touch base
Absolutely.
on that a little bit.
So for graded cards first, there's kind of two ways to collect, and the thing I kind of akin it to is it's a little bit more like it's kind of like there's coins are kind of something that a lot of people also know. It's been around for forever, right? And coins kind of have the same thing, right? Like, so you can have like just a coin that's worth a set amount, and you can get it appraised, right? So it's kind of almost, grading is almost kind of like how I would call getting a card appraised, right? So like you basically send a card in, you pay them a set amount, it's around that $20 range, and for a lot of times they're going to assign it a numerical grade. So it's going to be through 1 to 10, and then obviously 10 being the best, and that's what most people are looking for nowadays is kind of that 10. And so when you hear like a PSA graded card or a 10, or someone says something along that range, lines, that's kind of what it means, is it's graded in a numerical grade. So when you get a card like that, like to give a rough example, grading can really, especially on the Pokemon side, which is obviously, like you said, wildly popular today. And just to give people like a rough, before we get into our new shop, but to give people like a rough estimation, like for our entire shop sales, I would say like Pokemon is probably around that 75% mark. I mean, it's wildly popular today, and like you said, it's such a cool game. It's a timeless game that adults nowadays played as a kid, right? I mean, I played, Crystal and Sapphire and like so many of these cool Pokemon games, and like that's what's so cool about it, is like we get to kind of share that today with the newer generation, right? And like they get to kind of experience a lot of the same things we did as a kid, and like it's a very shared experience, which makes like Pokemon so cool. But to give like people a rough example on a graded card, like let's say you have it's a $30 card in its raw state, right? Just by itself before you get it quote unquote appraised. Sending that to PSA and getting a 10, you'll pay about $20 to $25. And obviously it is tough to get 10s, right? Like that's kind of why they're worth a good amount. It's pretty tough, and sometimes you can kind of, talk yourself into, oh, this looks really good, and then you send it in and it gets, an 8 or a 9, and then normally it's obviously you're at that point not going to make any money on it, right? It's going to kind of be one of those things where it's just kind of graded there. But to give people a rough idea, a $30 Pokemon card that comes back a 10, you pay $20 to $25 to get it graded. That card, depending on the card it is, if it's a little bit rarer, that could be probably between like $100 to a $200 card in a 10, So like it's definitely a really good return, but it's kind of one of those things where it's a little, you have to have a really good eye, obviously, and kind of, know what you're looking for at that point. That is one of the things we do at the shop. CJ, one of our, our great employee. He's
goat.
He's awesome.
He
And,
is.
between me and him, like if you stop in and, you have something, if you have, we have a lot of people that have like childhood collections that, they just haven't touched in years, right? And like we see it all, once a week at least. Like they'll bring in this awesome childhood collection, and like they'll have cards in there that we're like, hey, like you really should grade this. Like they want to just sell everything, and it's like, hey, I wouldn't even sell this to us right now. Like you should really look at grading this one. And like, so if you have something like that and like you want to bring some stuff in, we'll always try to help you the best we can, and like at least try to point you in the right direction, like whether that's, old sports collections, old sports wax, if it's still sealed. Like we have a couple of people that just reached out to us about like old sealed packs, binders full of old sports cards, and like some of that stuff obviously doesn't have a ton of value, but some of it does. Some of it has a lot of value. So like at that point, we can at least try to help you out and, we'll try to at least point you in the right direction. It's the least we can do for, kind of the community that helped us, and we'll at least always try to point you in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, you guys have always been so incredible when it comes to giving to your community.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
like obviously you have to when you kind of have the feedback that we've gotten and like the community involvement, because like
yeah.
we don't, we're not a business without the community involvement that we've had, right? So like obviously us existing in this, we're not like a essential services business, right? So like for us it's more so, community support means, everything to our business, obviously. So like if there's anything we can do, it's the little things that at least we can do to give back to the people that give back to us. So
Yeah, and this hobby means a great deal for everyone involved in different ways, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, you talked about how you kind of got back into the game, and
Yeah.
that can be said for me and my husband as
Yeah,
well. I know
absolutely.
that the pandemic completely like launched this
Absolutely.
back into the game.
Yep.
Kind of was slowing down there for a bit, but now it's unreal. I
Yeah.
mean, shops are selling out
Yeah, yeah.
of like latest releases,
Yep.
which is incredible. It's very popular, and Pokemon or Disney or even the sports cards, they all share a nostalgic feeling
Yes.
to some, depending on
Absolutely.
whoever comes in.
Yep.
And you guys are no strangers to large crowds. I mean, I've walked
Yeah.
into what we can get into now is your new shop
Yes.
that you guys recently moved into and
Absolutely.
just celebrated a year.
A year,
Which
yeah.
is crazy
It is,
to
I know.
me. But even I came in during the 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
Just even not coming into the 1 year anniversary,
Yeah.
the community that you guys have built and within the new space that you guys have built, it's
Yeah.
extremely welcoming. And just that there's a space like that. And I know that we have other,
Yeah.
TCG shops in the area,
Absolutely.
which I know you all talk. And
Yep,
so it's like, it's
absolutely.
no stranger, ain't nobody like hiding
Yeah,
nothing. Which again adds to the community
It does,
feel.
absolutely. And I think like to go on that, I think there's really we'll get into this a little bit in more detail in a while, but we've obviously been extensively researching the Madison market, and with that, I think it's really going back to Eau Claire. It's really like one of one as far as like our community that we have here, and then like the shops. Truly, like we have such a good like network of shops here,
Yeah.
and then our community is absolutely through the roof. Like the fact that Eau Claire can kind of support that many shops in kind of our community versus like some of the bigger metro areas that have half the shops we have. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just incredible. Like the community that we have here, and it's just really cool to like kind of see that, and like b just the shops too that we also have here. Like we do have a really good selection of shops, and like just a great, I think that helps obviously foster the community, right? When you have a good selection of shops, that really gets more people that wouldn't have necessarily kind of branched out and like looked to find things. Like you said with the pandemic, I think that really helped people kind of branch out and take some time and think like, what do I really enjoy, and
Yeah.
like what do I really like to do in my free time. And I think like obviously a lot of people turn back to this, and like a lot of people just found their hobby, right? And like I think that was really cool to see in the community. Is like I said, the Eau Claire community is absolutely, like, I've never seen another community that is like quite as invested in like this space, and makes it
Yep.
such a welcoming space too.
That we even hear that within other businesses
Yeah.
too. The level of collaboration,
It is. It's
external
incredible.
parties,
Yeah.
it's just wild, and it goes down as deep as a TCG store.
Exactly. Yeah.
It can, and then it can go as grand as the medical
Absolutely.
arena.
Yeah.
So it's the contrast and the cohesiveness that can all reside within Eau Claire is
it's awesome.
It
It's really
is.
cool.
It's very special. So new shop.
Yes.
Okay, let's chat about that.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you recognize that you had to expand.
Yeah, so kind of going from Banbury, to give people a rough idea, our Banbury shop, we had kind of a back section of it. It was obviously, if you've ever been to Banbury, it's an old tire factory. Really cool space. We loved Banbury.
Very cool.
But obviously, like, no AC, and with cards, the AC part kind of plays a pretty big deal because obviously humidity is not good at all for cardboard. And no AC makes stuff very humid in the summer. So we kind of knew, like, when we went into Banbury, obviously right away we had no like plans of expansion whatsoever,
sure.
right? And then, but like as soon as like the first weekend hit and we kind of felt it, we were like, Okay, with like summer coming up, we're probably going to need, and like with the community involvement, like we're probably going to need a bigger space, right? So we had a 500 square foot kind of space in Banbury, but really it was more of like a with after you got cases in there and you got like the because we kind of curtained off a little bit of the back for because we needed some storage, right?
Yeah.
It was more of like a 250 to like 300 square feet maybe of like walkable space, probably more like 250. So obviously pretty small, right? And like, we would have new releases like when we had Surging Sparks for Pokemon, a newer set that got a lot of people actually back into Pokemon.
Yeah.
That was a very popular release, and like, our release day for that was kind of rough. Like it was, having like 15 people in there like at a time. Like it was really cool. People were all really, really nice about it. And like, but we knew at that point, like, hey, we need to at least start looking at different places.
Yeah.
So we had moved in October, end of October to Banbury. And then we opened up the new shop on March 1st. So essentially, we were there for a little under 6 months roughly. About 5 months there in Banbury, and then moved into our new location. Now we were on Claremont, so we are at 2527 East Claremont Ave, kind of next to the Hot Pot place across from Milwaukee Burger and Hy-Vee, in that little shopping mall. Super nice place. We really like it. It's obviously much bigger than what we had before, so and it allows us kind of back rooms as well for storage and shipping and stuff we need as we do a lot of online sales as well. So. But yeah, we had our grand opening on March. Again, just such an incredible turnout from our community. I mean, we had at one point in the front room, just kind of our front section, our most people we had was 52 in just kind of that front section there, and like it's a lot for that space as well,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
so cool, obviously, to just kind of see the turnout for people to like come and support those, like you said, it's kind of, I think it's more of like it's not just an Eau Claire thing, but obviously, but like it's just bigger in Eau Claire. It feels like,
Oh
there's
yeah.
just so much support for like A, new businesses, but B, like if you build a community, like people really latch onto that, which is really cool to see in Eau Claire.
Yeah, so building off of community,
Yeah.
how do you, in as an entrepreneur, and obviously, I'm well aware of the game plays
Yeah.
within authenticity and
Yes.
trust
Yeah.
within the hobby.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of noise out there and a
Yes.
lot of poor experiences, unfortunately. So, how
Absolutely.
do you guys at Slab combat that?
Yeah, so I think part of the reason that we initially opened that retail space as well was, work hard enthusiasts at heart, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Tyler and I, we've been to countless, probably close to like 100 different shops, I would assume, at least for sure between the two of us.
Yeah.
And, so we've had all those experiences, right? Like we've walked into shops before that, no one says hi to you, you kind of walk in there and you're just another person that's kind of walking in, or they have like a little table that they have their friends they're talking to, right? And like it's kind of one of those things where they just kind of give you a little wave and you're just kind of off to the races,
Yep.
and then let me know if you need anything, kind of a thing. And we've seen others that are you're pricing way over market, or like we've seen everything, so like
Yeah.
after you see certain things, as a business owner, you kind of take that all into account, right? And you kind of say, hey, how can I do this better, and like how can I create something? If I were the customer, what would I want to walk into, right? Like how would I want to be greeted when I walk into the store, and how would I want to be treated? Do I want more attention? Do I want less attention? Is this like a commodity business where some businesses you don't want to give as much attention, right? You want to like kind of let the customer do their thing for a little bit
Yeah.
and then kind of check in with them. Some you want to be able to like kind of guide them, because a lot of the times there's a lot of different variables, right? So like as a business owner, you have to kind of sit down and say, hey, like what would I want as the customer, and what do I think customers would really appreciate? So like that's kind of how we initially started, is we just wanted to be friendly, welcoming, and just kind of let people enjoy the hobby as they want, right? But kind
Mm-hmm.
of guide them once they pick their path on like what they want to enjoy, and like, hey, this is what I like, hey, kind of guide them down that path and show them the different options they have, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of what we do pretty well at Slab Factory, is like being able to kind of take what a person wants to do in the hobby, and like take what their hobby preference is, and just kind of be able to assist them down that path, and just have the knowledge to be able to guide them through what, other options they might not, have known. Some people have never graded a card. Some people, never had played One Piece before, and like kind of introducing them to different things, and, kind of like I said, just being able to have the knowledge to open some doors to them that they might not have known before is pretty cool too. So
yeah, well, and then talking about demographic, right? Yours is pretty special because
Yeah.
it can range.
It
I mean,
can,
I'm sitting
absolutely.
I'm sitting in the store, and like there are adults
Yep.
playing, like actually playing
Yeah,
the game of
absolutely.
Pokemon, and then there's a kid that just cracked a booster pack coming up. How much is this worth?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's really cool. Obviously, between me and Tyler, we have a pretty good plethora of experience of, dealing with different customer interactions and, in different sales roles between the two of us. That's pretty much all we've done our life, so like and for us, being able to, kind of adapt to different situations is obviously critical for any of our employees, because you're right, we have, a couple days, we'll have a 70-year-old come in and want to talk, old sports cards with us, and, we love to do that. And then we have, 10-year-olds that come in and want to talk, the new Pokemon, and we love to do that, right? And so like it's really cool, like when you love cards and you love like kind of what you're doing, it's pretty easy just to kind of, talk it with anyone that comes in. It's kind of one of those things where people kind of volunteer at like, space museums because it's what they enjoy, right?
Yeah.
And like they can sit there and talk about that stuff all day, right? And that's
Correct.
the same thing with us. Like
Yes.
we could sit in that shop, and anyone who comes in that wants to talk anything, cards, like we'll sit there and talk it, right? It's what we enjoy and love to do. So
Yeah, and some of our listeners might be wondering, well, what is it about cards? And we've revisited the idea a lot throughout the conversation of just it looks different to
Yes,
everybody.
absolutely.
It can range from the playability of
Yep.
a card. So a lot of your trading cards have a meta, a game behind them, and so some people come in for the playability aspect. Me and my husband personally, we love the art
Yes.
or the specific character, depending on the series, right? The Disney, the
Yeah.
One Piece, the Pokemon. And we've actually grown my husband and I have grown our own little mini community within our friends.
Absolutely, yeah.
And have gotten them to come and visit the shop. And
Yep.
then all together we'll purchase product, which we'll get to in a minute. But
Yeah.
we'll purchase product and then go back to our home and have pull parties.
Exactly.
Because we're opening the packs together.
Yeah. And you get to celebrate it all together.
Yeah, and
it's
like
so fun.
getting really great hits, so like
Yeah.
either cards that you want, cards that might be worth a ton of money.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just dependent on what it is for that individual, and
Yes.
it, like it said, it looks different for everybody. But
Yeah.
can you talk about some of the products specifically? I've said packs and stuff, but what does that all mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of depends a little bit on, like you said, kind of the IP, right? So like this year specifically, to get in a little bit more detail, like so Topps is obviously a very popular name in the sports card community. Panini is the other, big name. So Panini has had the license for basketball and football, which obviously are kind of the two most popular sports in the U.S. as of right now. Panini has had that license. So basically what that means is they're able to print the logos of the teams on the card,
Okay.
which is a pretty big deal to people that collect cards, right?
Yeah.
So like there's other products out there and other companies that make cards, but they don't have the logo, which a lot of people don't really like necessarily quite as much. So the big deal this year is Topps just acquired the license for NBA, so for all basketball products. So the first Topps licensed product, because they had the license a long, long time ago, and then Panini took it for a while, and now they have it back again. The first product just came out about 2 weeks ago, so it was called Topps Flagship, and so for a lot of people, like that was a really big moment in the hobby, right? Is because like it's for the first time in forever, like a new company has the logos and everything. So like all the products that came out of that, to give people a rough idea, kind of what they do on most releases is like there's a value box, which is kind of your what they call a blaster or like a small box. It's around that like $25 mark for Topps. The mega box, which is kind of like a big square kind of box, that one is going to be kind of around that $50 mark, but that one's going to give you essentially just a couple more packs, and then it gives you a lot of times like a guaranteed hit.
Yeah.
So like they'll say in this box you'll at least get two of, this parallel. So it's like red and green or like blue and, something
Yeah.
along those lines. And then there's a hobby box is what it's called. So hobby box is the most expensive box. That one was around that like $120 to $150 range. But that one essentially will guarantee an auto or a mem card, which is a memorabilia card, part of a jersey, sometimes they'll do like part of a ball, something along those lines, some
Okay.
kind of cool stuff.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the different like kind of tiers, I guess I would call it,
Yeah.
kind of in the sports realm. Pokemon is pretty similar. They have obviously loose packs, which you'll find every once in a while, which is just one pack. They'll have booster bundles, which is like 6 packs, which is kind of like a mega box in the sports, and then they'll have a booster box, which is going to be a full 36 packs of said, whatever set pack it is. So it's kind of cool to be able to, obviously we need to have stuff at different ranges and everyone's kind of budgets, right? So that's the big thing too, at Slab Factory as well, is like there's many shops that, and we're kind of finding this out too, doing a little bit more market research, is like there's a lot of shops that will only deal in like $50 plus cards, right? And like,
Sure.
because for them that just makes more sense because it's less volume, obviously business wise,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then more, right, like ROI per card, which business wise does make sense. But for us that just doesn't make sense, right? Because like for the 10-year-old that's coming in,
Yeah.
right, and like for the 15-year-old or even, the 30-year-old that's just getting back into it, a lot of people don't want, that's going to be a chase card for them, right, that they're going to have to work up to. And so like for us, it's really important to be able to have like loose packs that people can just come in and, if they want to spend $5, like there's something for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they want to spend $2, like we have dollar cards, we have vintage bulk that like people can kind of relive. It's just all vintage packs from like when, I was a kid and stuff, and like you can buy bulk of that for 3 for $1, right? And so like that's a big thing for us, is being able to kind of cater to any budget and like not just dealing in the high end stuff, which we have a decent amount of high end stuff, but like having a little bit of everything for, the different budgets as well is important. And obviously that kind of goes back to the sealed, is kind of having just packs, the booster bundles, the booster boxes. It kind of gives everyone a better opportunity to be able to fit it in their budget, depending on, like you said, what they kind of want to do. Some people can go in on a booster box together and,
Mm-hmm.
share it, or, and you share the hits too, but it's kind of cool to be able to kind of split that up and to have the different kind of product lines. So
Oh yeah, me and my husband try not to split booster boxes because it's never that we get a balanced. It's either he gets all the hits
yep,
or I get all the hits, and
that's
it's like
normally how it
that's
works.
great.
Yeah. That's normally how it works.
So talking about products, I know right now there's scarcity,
Yes.
and the demand is much higher.
Yes.
So can you kind of talk about what that experience is like?
Yeah, so as kind of on the business side of things, right? So like you have distributors, as most businesses do, that will kind of obviously supply. So they'll get everything from, Pokemon, from Topps, from, whatever the companies are that are making these cards, and then they'll obviously distribute it to different businesses, right? So like obviously with distribution, it is very tough right now. Like no one can get new accounts with these distributors because there's so many different shops that are trying to get new accounts, and there's just not enough product to go around to the existing shops, but obviously B, just there couldn't be any, new accounts for that either. But with the scarcity, we try to do our best. The big thing right now is like MSRP versus like market and like that
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? So like what we try to do on all new releases, obviously as a newer shop, the newer you are as a shop, the less purchase history you have, the less product you get, right? So that's kind of how like
Sure. Okay.
the system works, right? So like these shops that you see getting, a ton of product, they've been around for 10, 15 years, right? And so like they'll have a bigger purchase history, and like that's how allocations get put out to stores. And so with us, we were really lucky, honestly, to, get in with the distributors we did. And like, we have a really good relationship with them, and we understand, like, it's just kind of how it is for now. And there will be a turn at some point, right? And like that product will start to kind of become more available, and like, we'll start to get more, and we'll build our allocations that way. And like a lot of stores then will, it's kind of one of those things where there's a lot of really small stores that don't tend to plan to stick around for a long time, right?
Okay.
Not in our area, but like a lot throughout the U.S. So like that will kind of help a lot of the other stores that, do plan on being around for a while kind of get a little more allocation too. So it's just kind of more of a waiting game at this point.
Okay.
But what we kind of do at this point with new releases is for Pokemon, if you're ever looking for like a new Pokemon release, we normally have a line, obviously, and it normally sells out really fast, but like we'll get a very limited amount and then we'll sell that for at MSRP or very near MSRP. And then, once that allocation is gone, then most of our stuff from there, because obviously that's all we're going to get from the distributor. We don't really get reprints at this point. Like the reprints end up very often going to only the large accounts. So like if there's ever a reprint of something, because technically Pokemon should be getting reprinted for 2 years.
Yes.
For a set. That tends to not happen right now because obviously they're so focused on the new sets, right? And so because it's so popular,
it is.
I get it. Like, you only have so many printers and you can only do so much about it. So like the reprints tend to not ever trickle down to us at that point. So like anything we get from distribution, we try to always be, as fair as possible and try to sell that stuff at MSRP or very close to it. And then from there, we buy collections from people, and then that's kind of how we fill our inventory from there, right? Is like we'll buy collections from people, we'll buy at shows. We do pretty much all the big shows. One of the big things for us to keep our inventory fresh, because like that's the biggest thing too, going back to like what I would want to see as a customer is like you don't want to walk into the card shop, or really anywhere and like see the same stuff every time, right? Like if you're coming in every week and it's the exact same cards, it's like, okay, well, I just saw these last week, right? And like, you kind of want a fresh inventory, because like that's, even if you're not going to buy it, it's something for you to go in, and for a business owner, it brings more people in too, because they know you're at least going to have some new stuff, right? To kind of thumb through. So for us, a big portion of like our business is making sure we go to the big shows like Collecticon, Card Party, a lot of like the really big Pokemon shows. We this year, alone, we've went to Tampa, Kansas City, Seattle, Portland. We've went to Chicago, Houston, Dallas. So we've been a little bit all over the place, and like we do a lot of those big shows to be able to bring that cool inventory back, right? So like, because then customers really like, because sometimes there's just stuff you just can't get anywhere else, right? Like people will just bring it to these big shows because like they've been saving it for that big show, right? And so like it's kind of cool to be able to do that for people and like bring that stuff back, and like that's a big part of our plan as well, is to be able to kind of, always keep our inventory fresh, because that allows customers to be able to say, hey, like I can go spend 30 minutes at the card shop this week, because I know they'll have at least some new stuff and some new stuff to kind of look through too. So, and CJ does a great job of that. He takes in, like I said, a lot of stores don't really deal in like the small stuff. CJ does a great job of like if there's a kid that wants to trade something in, if there's anything, anyone that the deal can't be too small, which is really cool. And like he'll spend his time, he'll take his time.
He does. He really does. I've seen it firsthand. And he's like, thanks for waiting, Chelsea. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, no, really, it's okay.
Yeah, and he's great with making sure everyone feels very welcome and feels like their time is important too. And it's really cool to be able to. That's a big thing for us, and like we kind of talked about too as like as ownership, and CJ as well, is like making sure that like if someone wants to trade a card in on something, like it, as long as it's not like just even like bulk cards will take a lot of times, right? But like no deal can really be too small, because a lot of people just, like I said, they're trading in something to get something they want, right?
Yeah.
So like that's what's more important to us.
Yeah, you're always guaranteed a really great experience going to Slab.
We really appreciate that.
No, yeah. I mean, I was just there last night casually, and even for me as a person, you said that you go out and travel and are able to bring that inventory to a local space. I get to see cards that I see online. Yeah. Right? Well, like right now, and some people might know this, you have a Luffy Dodgers card. Yeah. That's crazy. I was like, wow, I never thought I'd get to see one in person. So it's just even that experience to a collector like myself is like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of the cool part. Like I said, it's kind of goes back to like doing what you love, is like that's what's really cool about it, is like being able to because those show weekends are long, right? Like you're traveling, then you're doing like 15, 16-hour days, but like it's just so much. And like CJ does great. It's normally me and CJ that go to these shows, and like we've had a great time doing them, and like it's we just enjoy it so much, like, because we know at the end of this we get to bring it all back and like get to, people get to look at it and like trade their cool stuff in for it too. Like it's doing it more for like being able to have it in the store for the the community again. So it's a lot of fun. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, and the influence that has been had right on the hobby. Like you've got, I know at your shop you have YouTube up,
Yeah,
and so you've
yep.
got a lot of really big YouTubers that are
Yeah.
constantly cracking packs, and maybe some listeners they've scrolled through TikTok and have seen the occasional opening video. Like you had it with Labubu's. People do
Yeah.
opening videos, and it's the
Absolutely.
same. It's the same with packs, but obviously you've got. Applications like Whatnot and TikTok
Yes.
to
Yep.
compete with, even more so than the retailers,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so like it's a very good point. So a lot of obviously with time today, obviously a lot of stuff is going on, the internet and apps and stuff like that. So Whatnot is a very popular application. It allows you to kind of like just bid in real time. So like a lot of people will either run singles auctions, so they'll like bid on the singles. So the person will just put a card on the screen, they'll bid on it, and then they'll get it shipped to them essentially from there. So they'll do breaks on there as well. TikTok Live has a couple things too. But honestly, I think a lot of people, we certainly have some customers that like obviously do both, right? But I think for a lot of people, me included, a lot of people just kind of miss the community aspect of it, right? And like I think that's what it really tends to come back to for a lot of people. And like I think the biggest thing for like Whatnot specifically is it tends to get a certain like it tends to be a little bit more popular for the sports community, just because there's a lot of breaks for sports.
Oh, sure.
Because it makes a lot more sense, because basically what they'll do is they'll open a box and then they'll break it up by team, right? So like I can buy, if you're just a Green Bay Packer fan, which I am, I don't really care about a lot of the other teams in the
valid.
NFL. So like as a Green Bay Packer fan, if I'm opening a box, just give me all the Packer stuff and then you guys can keep the rest, right? So like that's kind of what a lot of people will end up doing breaks for, is like they just care about one team. If they're a Lions fan, a Packer fan, a Rams fan, whatever it is, that makes a lot more sense. In Pokemon, it doesn't make as much sense. So I think a lot of people, especially the Pokemon crowd, really just tends to enjoy the community aspect and like really doing it themselves. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Whereas the sports is a little bit different. I think that's just more of the culture of it. So
Yeah. So we unfortunately have to wrap up our time here. But as we wrap up, was really critical about inviting you on because you were one of the first businesses to hop on board our new Chamber eBuck
Yeah, absolutely.
initiative. So our Chamber Bucks will, as of December 1st, no longer be available for purchase physically. However, there is an online platform. You can now get them sent straight to your phone. So, and you just recently became an investor
Yep,
too. So
absolutely.
we talked about the theme of community,
Yes.
right? And was that kind of part of the initiative of joining the Chamber?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
was that?
I mean, it was really important to us, to join the chamber and, kind of be a part of like I said, that anything that we can do to kind of be more involved in the Eau Claire community is obviously, I mean, I'm born and raised in Chippewa, live in Lake Hallie, I'm in Eau Claire every day, right? So like between those three cities, I mean, that's where I've spent my entire life, right? So
Yeah.
like it's very important for us to be able to be a part of the Eau Claire Chamber and like be a part of the Eau Claire community. And obviously the Chamber eBucks, like before this, I was an IT system administrator. So like anything like electronic like that, I'm normally on the first wave of, so
Thank you.
I tended to, I just saw it and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. So
Yeah.
I joined it right away, and I think it's a really good initiative, obviously. And, I think it's definitely something, the businesses will really enjoy, as people start to join it. So
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's really critical that we keep our local dollars
yeah,
local.
absolutely.
So
Yep.
just real quick here, we have Small Business Saturday coming up. So
Yep.
obviously, as a small business, like go and if you got little kiddos that like to crack some packs, or
Yeah.
even you as an adult, you can go and
Yeah, absolutely.
shop local.
If
and-
we really appreciate that, obviously, and we always love to keep everything local. With kind of Small Business Saturday and Black Friday, we will be running quite a few different specials too. So absolutely stop in, and we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for coming in today. I know we could keep going
We could
forever.
talk for hours, yep.
Catch us on our next podcast. But once again, thank you very much, and thank you to our listeners, and thank you to our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. Just a couple quick announcements. Obviously, yes, Small Business Saturday is upon us, so be sure to keep those dollars local and be on the lookout for our Chamber eBucks program that has launched at this point. So visit our website, and you can purchase that and go out and spend local to participating merchants. But other than that, we hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you all in the next one.